Run it! This one the hit, yo. Lady Sarojini. Bless up everyone. This is Chad and Ben from Jamaica here representing for the host, Lady Sarojini with the Caribbean Connection Show. Hey, Panwa, 93.5 FM, CHMR, 11. That's a pardon me. I'm a criminal, so get on your searching. But let me tell you though, if you never know, I'm an island man with an African culture. No drugs, no in my bag.
Ole, 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 feeling hot, hot, hot.
Hello, beautiful people. You're locked into Sarojini on Caribbean Connections on 93.5 FM, online chmr.ca, Bell Alliance 787, Rogers Cable 942. Be sure to tune in for your weekly dose of Caribbean vibes. Later!
Oh yeah. Your bumper is a magnet. I stick on like a magnet.
Yeah, it's magnetic. Join Sarojini on Caribbean Connections, Thursdays at 1. Walk through the sands with poetry from our great leaders and academics. Jive with us to soca, reggae, chutney, and calypso. Get your current cricket results, meet special guests, and more. Every Thursday, 11:30 Eastern, 1 p.m. Newfoundland time.
Good afternoon to all of you, and thank you so much for tuning in wherever you're listening from. My name is Sarojini, and I am the host of Caribbean Connections. Today, we have a very special broadcast for you. We're celebrating Women's History Month and International Women's Day 2026 here on Caribbean Connections in collaboration with CHMR. But before we go any further, I would like to say a very special and warm welcome to all of you listening here on the island of Newfoundland and Labrador, in Toronto, in New Brunswick, in Halifax, Regina, Saskatoon, Calgary, Vancouver, Abbotsford, Maple Ridge, and on the Sunshine Coast in beautiful British Columbia. Crossing over to New York, a very special shout out to some special folks listening, Nalini and Vinod. And to you listening in Connecticut, Washington, D.C., Texas, California, going even further to New Delhi, India, Berlin, Germany, Egypt, Nigeria, Tanzania, Sudan, Zimbabwe, the Netherlands, Japan, and to you, my brothers and sisters in the Caribbean, in Guyana, in Trinidad and Tobago, Jamaica, St. Lucia, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, St. Kitts and Nevis, the U.S. Virgin Islands, the British Virgin Islands, Barbados, Belize, the Bahamas, and to all of you whom I haven't mentioned, thank you for joining us. We have a beautiful show curated for you. But before I go any further, let's open up today's broadcast with Queen Africa, and this is Lioness on the Rise.
Are you ready? 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 When the roll is called out, I'll be standing taller to face the darkest and the hardest of times. We'll be taken care of Never say never, willingness forever to fight and be strong. Once it's for better, I'll write every letter and moving right along. And I'll roll with the punches, accept changes, work with the formula, do what I have to do. And call me by my name, I am ready to roll. Once the rules remain the same, how the story's been told. Call me anytime, never clock out. Lioness is on the rise, don't you ever have doubt. When you are willing to serve, we have room to observe, to see if you can walk the walk you took. Let me give you my word, my voice must be heard. Bravery is a piece of my heart. Call me by my name, I am ready to roll. Once the rules remain the same, how the story's been told. Call me anytime, never tap out. A lioness is on the rise. Don't ever have no doubt. When the roll is called up, we'll be standing taller to face the darkest and the hardest of times. We'll be taking care of all the children thereof. But if it's required, we'll be on the front lane. You can call me by my name, I am ready to roll. Once the rules remain the same, how the story's been told. Call me, never, anytime. Lioness is on the run. Don't you ever call me by my name, I am ready to roll. Once the rules remain the same, how the story's been told. Call me anytime, never cop out. A lioness is on the run, ready to roll. Call me by my name, I am ready to roll. Once the rules remain the same, how the story's been told. Call me anytime, never cop out. I'm ready when you're ready. Yeah, don't you ever have doubt.
Oh, welcome back. That was Queen Africa opening up today's broadcast with Lioness on the Rise. Good afternoon again and happy International Women's Day and Women's History Month. Thank you for joining us today as we bring to you another spectacular group of panelists to celebrate Women's Day. This is our 8th year of celebrations on CHMR, and we want to thank all of you who have supported and encouraged us throughout the years, and most of all, to those of you who tune in every week and especially every year for this very special broadcast celebrating Women's History Month and International Women's Day. March 8th is International Women's Day, IWD. It's a global day to recognize and celebrate women's and girls' social, economic, cultural, and political achievements. It's also a time to highlight the progress made in advancing women's rights and the ongoing efforts needed to ensure their full participation in all aspects of society. And folks, I'll give you a little historical background here as per my research. The beginnings of International Women's Day can be traced back to the early 20th century. It emerged from the activities of labor movements in North America and Europe and reflected a growing call for women's equal participation in society. International Women's Day first took place on March 19, 1911 in Austria, Denmark, Germany, and Switzerland. That day, over 1 million women and men attended public events to show their support. Other countries began to observe and celebrate this day in the years that followed. The United Nations recognized 1975 as International Women's Year and began celebrating March 8th as International Women's Day. Today, International Women's Day is a day of unity, celebration, reflection, advocacy, and action, and is celebrated in many countries worldwide. And to refresh your minds, you're probably wondering, what are the colors? The combination of purple, green, and white originated from the Women's Social and Political Union in the UK in 1908. Green symbolizes hope, white represents purity, and purple signifies justice and dignity. We have an amazing panel today. Women who have worked tirelessly, who have given so much of themselves towards the fight for a better tomorrow for women's rights. So without further delay, let me introduce our amazing panel to you.
Are you ready?
Dear sisters, welcome, and thank you all for being here as we celebrate the 8th year in collaboration with CHMR at Memorial University in St. John's, Newfoundland and Labrador, to honor women all around the world, not forgetting to highlight the challenges that we've all faced and the achievements and successes we've celebrated, and to see the progress we've made so far as women and girls. Today, we are discussing rights, justice, action for all women and girls. And this is the United Nations theme, by the way. The campaign theme is Give to Gain. International Women's Day 2026, under the theme Rights, Justice, Action for All Women and Girls, marks a moment to amplify our collective determination. No matter how deeply rooted the sexism or how discouraging the politics, we refuse to step back or abandon our mandate. Instead, we climb together for the rights and empowerment of all women and girls. This year, IWD 2026 calls for action to dismantle the structural barriers to equal justice, discriminatory laws, weak legal protections, and harmful practices and social norms that erode the rights of women and girls. First up, we will have Sophia Solomon. Sophia is a passionate public servant who has spent her career helping newcomers and communities thrive across Newfoundland and Labrador. With over 5 years of experience in immigration, settlement, and policy development, she brings together a unique blend of compassion, strategy, and results-driven leadership. Her journey includes working in government, post-secondary education, and community organizations, where she has led initiatives in immigration, international recruitment, international student engagement, and equity-focused policy reform. From supporting displaced Ukrainians to relocation of internationally educated nurses from India, Sophia's work is rooted in fairness, inclusion, and real-world impact. Recognized for her leadership and service, Sophia received the Public Service Award of Excellence for her deployment to Poland by the Government of Newfoundland and Labrador. When she's not working on immigration and policy projects, Sophia is driven by a belief that strong communities start with empathy, collaboration, and helping one another. In her spare time, she loves spending time with her cats and dancing. Sophia, you are no stranger to me, and I know you've done a lot of work in conjunction with CHMR when you were at the Monsu Executive. You're a very passionate, rather, public servant, and you have done so many wonderful things in your life. You've been an advocate for volunteerism. You've traveled a lot personally and with your work. I want you to just come on here, just tell us about a little about yourself and give us your perspective on the United Nations theme for IWD 2026, Rights, Justice, Action for All Women and Girls. Take it away, Sophia.
Thank you so much, Sarojini, for that introduction and for those kind words. Like Sarojini mentioned, my name is Sophia. I grew up in Bangalore, a metropolitan city in South India, and moved to Dubai with my family in 2012. I'm so grateful to be given this opportunity to speak today alongside powerful women and leaders for International Women's Day 2026. And I'm going to speak about my lived experience having grown up in India and my journey as an immigrant woman in Canada. So like I said, I immigrated to Canada in 2014 to pursue my bachelor's in psychology. And I've been living in Newfoundland for the last 12 years. And this journey here has really shaped me into the woman I am today. I built my values and belief system, especially during my early university days, while serving as an executive on the student union at Memorial University. At that time in 2017, I was the first female international student who served on the MUN executive board, but I'm so happy to see so many other women of color who have held positions after me. And this only goes to show that we are moving in the right direction. I'm fortunate to have spent my adult life here, as it gave me the freedom to get to know myself, know more about what I'm capable of, and what makes me happy. This place helped me follow my passion and achieve things that I never dreamt of. It gave me a sense of safety as a woman and to dream big. And I'm a strong, independent woman today because of the opportunity Canada gave me. And I'm so grateful for all the experiences I've gained, especially working with newcomers and giving back to the province that has given me so much. I acknowledge there are many women and girls who want to come to Canada, especially for the freedom and the safety that they don't get back home. Most women aren't allowed to dream and are just expected to get married and bear children, which is heartbreaking, but change is happening. However, when I think about gender equality and what it means to me and justice for all women, I can't help but think about the women in my life and my experience growing up in a brown household in India. As a country, India has progressed in many ways. I've seen the shift in mentality in women in my hometown. Women are more aware of their rights. They know they have choices. They are independent. They leave toxic relationships and marriages and challenge gender norms. These are things that came with a lot of judgment back in the day and still persist to this day. I recall not having the same freedom as my male siblings and cousins growing up. I was called a problem maker for asking questions and wanting to have the same rights as them. And the most hurtful and disappointing part is the women who have played a major role in perpetuating these harmful actions because they had internalized what they were taught to their core, and because they were never allowed to question male family members or elders in their family. Patriarchy and misogyny are so ingrained in our culture that it has been normalized for generations. In Western culture, the culture pushes in the same direction as the law. In India, it's not like that. We've got laws to promote equality, but culture and tradition constantly drag us in the opposite direction. The gap between rules and lived reality is what makes the idea of equality in India so complex. Until traditions are changed to not center men and exclude women, India has a long way to go. In South Asia, many traditions and rituals are centered on men, and men are given the highest power. From a very young age, when a son is born, they are treated with utmost superiority
and taught that women are meant to serve their every desire and want. They aren't taught values of kindness, compassion, empathy, helping others, or being a good person. But instead, most traditional households glorify sons and fathers and excuse their bad behaviors. These are the same men that grow to disrespect women, objectify women, can take responsibility for their actions, and expect to be served by women irrespective of how they treat others. This is why it's really important that parents pay extra attention as to how they raise their sons, because women are constantly told about thinking about others' feelings, shrinking ourselves, abandoning ourselves, giving up our dreams, and cater to men. But why aren't men taught this? I believe there is hope in our current generation, where women are no longer accepting the bare minimum and tolerating abuse because of what people will say and the stigma that comes with it. Change is happening, but it's not as easy as it looks, and it's uncomfortable being that woman who constantly has to fight an internal battle and against members of your family and society. I struggle with this when I go back home, and when certain expectations are put on me just because I'm a girl. For example, I'm expected to wake up early, but the men can sleep till afternoon, no problem. I've been expected to cook and take care of the family when the men don't even enter the kitchen. I'm responsible for the emotional labor and to carry the weight of maintaining all relationships with close and distant relatives in my family, but the men have no such expectations. I'm responsible for the status and the honor of my family's name, but the burden doesn't fall on men. How is this fair just because I'm a girl? There are days I feel guilty for not living up to the expectations, and there are days I feel alone because the people around me don't take me seriously and minimize me. There have been times when I find myself trying to please the male figures in my life, often sacrificing my own wants and needs. There have also been times when my feelings weren't considered, when I was made to feel like I'm too much, too loud, too emotional, too aggressive for speaking up. It is exhausting to constantly stand up for myself, and some days I lose the battle. But the important thing is to never give up and to continue to choose ourselves. Because when we stand up to injustice, inequality, violence against women, sexism, misogyny, and patriarchy, we stand up for all women around the world and the next generation of women and girls so they have it a bit better than we did. I'm grateful for my family and friends who have supported me at my lowest, and I acknowledge that everyone's doing their best in their capacity that they have. So am I. But we must continue to hold men accountable in these conversations. To end this, and when I think about give to gain, as women in this world, we are constantly giving to everyone around us in many shapes and forms, in the many hats and roles we play in our daily lives, and as individuals in a community that supports and uplifts other women. I want to take this moment to thank the women across the world who so selflessly give without expecting anything in return, particularly mothers who give life and spend their whole lives catering to the development of the life of their children. I also want to thank the women in my life who have played crucial roles, my female friends who show up for me every day and are with me during my hardest times, spending countless hours talking to me and supporting me. My mom, sisters, aunts, grandma, for their abundant love and guidance without which life would be impossible. And the co-workers who show up for me, the women who I once met as strangers, and that I now look up to and inspire me. I'm grateful for you all. Thank you for your time and for listening to my story. I know there's a lot going on around the world, and it's hard to pretend that we live in a world that is just and free for women. As optimistic and as hopeful as I am, I want to acknowledge the reality that there are thousands of women who are still facing gender-based violence, not only in India, but here in America and Canada as well. We must acknowledge the pain and harm that is inflicted on women and the fear that we live with in our day-to-day lives. If I can leave with one message, it's to the fathers, brothers, uncles, cousins, and if you hold privilege as a man, please step up and take a moment to look at the role you are playing in the lives of women around you, in your home, in your friend circles, at work, or socially. Being kind, considerate, believing women, respecting women, and supporting us doesn't make you less masculine. In fact, you will notice more people appreciating and respecting you for treating us with dignity, respect, and empathy. No one is perfect, but it's important to start to hold ourselves accountable so we can all live in a world where everyone is equal. Thank you so much. That's all.
Well, Sophia, thank you ever so much. That was quite an interesting and riveting opening to our IWD panel here, 2026, with CHMR, Mun Radio, and Caribbean Connections. Thank you very much, Sophia. Our second panelist will be Michelle Hawco. Michelle is from Newfoundland, currently living in Conception Bay South. She is a registered social worker and leader who has national experience in senior leadership roles in both the public and private sectors in the areas of justice, institutional and community, corrections, child welfare, and Indigenous relations. Michelle has experience in leadership, change management, and client support in both the public and private sectors. In the last 5 years, she has been working directly with many Indigenous communities on projects that are focused on the development, expansion, and implementation of Innu-led services in Innu-led organizations for Innu children and families in their communities. Michelle is an ally of Indigenous people and supports Indigenous communities' vision of self-determination and Indigenous-led services that contribute to healing and community strength. Michelle is a board member with Stella Circle, which is a community organization that provides services to adults who face many barriers, including mental health challenges, addictions, trauma, and poverty, homelessness, underemployment, and criminal justice involvement. She is a skilled transformational leader and has led major change and growth initiatives in corporate, not-for-profit, and government organizations. Her current and past clients seek counsel on governance, executive mentorship, planning, and policy leadership. Michelle is an experienced social worker and leader and has worked with many populations and has led many projects and led change initiatives throughout her career to addressing systemic barriers, poverty, racism, and discrimination. Michelle, welcome to Caribbean Connection and International Women's Day 2026. How are you feeling?
I'm good, Sarojini. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, you and I go back a long ways. Even though you're new to Caribbean Connections, I know you've been seeing our promos and what we have going on, whether it's International Women's Day, Black History Month, or zooming in or something special that's going on campus or in town. And our sons played in sports. We've had a chance to talk together about what you've been doing, all the many things and all the hats you've been wearing. And I was particularly very much interested in your work with various Indigenous communities. And I know you've had experience in senior leadership roles in both the public and the private sectors in the areas of justice, corrections, child welfare, and Indigenous relations. You've got extensive experience in leadership, change management, and client support, and as I mentioned, in both the public and the private sectors. So, Michelle, today's theme, I know you mentioned you want to focus on the United Nations theme, which is rights, justice, actions for all women and girls. Give us your perspective, Michelle, on this.
Thank you very much, Sarojini. Thank you for inviting me to be part of this panel. It's my honor to be here. Thank you, Sophia, for sharing your journey. It was very heartfelt and moving, and I learned a lot about your experience. And thank you for sharing. There's lots of learning, and I'm glad that Canada has been a friend to you, and you've been able to move forward in your personal and professional life. And I'm appreciate your words. I'm very happy to be here as well. And I reflected, on the UN theme, and also on the Give to Gain theme. And I've given some thought to how I can share my own personal experience and hopefully make a contribution to this panel through my experience. So when I think about the themes, I think about my own journey. I've always worked with a social justice lens in my work. Starting in my early days, it seemed to be something that that was just part of who I was. And then I built on that with both my experiences, in work and as a volunteer, and in the educational, I guess, journey that I followed. I always wanted to understand, why there wasn't equality. What were the circumstances that contributed, to inequality for women, for girls, and for others, that I worked with. What was it that helped people to thrive? What were the supports? What were the perspectives that really made a difference? How could systems support change and make them more accessible and open and less patriarchal? What were some of those values? What really helped? What does help create empowerment and create opportunities for individual and social equality? And when I think about myself, in all of my roles, I'm a daughter, I'm a sister, I'm a friend, I'm a mother. I was a wife, so I was married for a long time. I've been an employee in various roles from, frontline to senior level positions in various sectors, public and private, and different places across the country. I've been a leader and continue, in that capacity, and an advisor. And fundamentally, I've been a social worker navigating those systems that didn't always understand me. So part of what I want to speak about is my own journey, as well as some of my reflections on the work, that I've done and continue to do with others. And I've, taken the opportunity to reflect on, the women that I've worked with in various capacities and what some of their barriers have been and what have been some of the I guess, elements that have contributed, to building on their strengths and creating some change in those systems. So for me, I've often worked in male-dominated systems, and I understood and knew the difference, I think, early on. And I made a decision to gravitate to people and to some of those systems, positions, and relationships with people who were committed to changing that in some way. I gravitated and made, I think, a lot of decisions in my career to work in places and with people where I felt like I could be valued and that I made a contribution, even though my style of leadership or my style of working, even, prior to formal leadership roles, were based on a lot of the values that are part of being a social worker or somebody working, in that field. I always led and worked with strong emphasis on building relationships. I valued the importance of building connection, and that connections, fuel change. I always came from a lens of really wanting and seeing the differences that people had access because of, the lens of injustice, of, patriarchy, of misogyny. I saw those things. I saw the impact of colonization and continue to do on Indigenous people. I saw the systems that were designed for men and that women had to work in. I asked a lot of questions, and I think, my training as a social worker and later in my career, working and being trained formally in leadership really has helped me to frame how to move things forward and from myself. And the people that recognized, my skills and supported my strengths, I saw something. I thrived when my leadership was understood and valued, when my approaches were valued, where I was measured against a model that was designed, for men. I had challenges. I struggled. That didn't work for me. And more than that, I saw people attack me, for the way that I was, and certainly diminish my value as a leader and as a woman in those roles. So all of those experiences, have helped to shape me how I've choose to live, how I choose to lead, and how I support women and have supported women in my roles. For a big part of my career, I worked in the corrections world. So I, started off as a probation officer and parole officer. I worked in provincial institutions, federal. I worked in community corrections. I worked in regional and executive offices. So I had the privilege of working in so many different positions with so many different people. And it was an amazing experience. And I worked with some great people. And at that time, and I certainly still hope, the federal government within that department, had lots of glimpses of being progressive and trying to create change within, a paramilitary organization. But at the same time, it also had a big mandate to support reintegration and supporting people to be better versions of themselves, so that when they came out of prison or that system, that, they were stronger and had some of their needs addressed and could move out to society and move into better places, and their risk of, continuing involvement in the justice system, was reduced. So I took that seriously, every single day, and I worked, within that mandate. And for part of that time, I worked in a women's institution, and it was a new women's institution. I was part of the design and commissioning, and that's when I was in BC. And what was really wonderful within the women offender sector is that they had a women's strategy, creating choices, it was called. And it was after many years of them having very many, negative, incidents, that weren't contributing to women's well-being, that weren't contributing to positive reintegration for these women, because they tried to create a system that for women that was based upon, men, and it didn't work. So they created this framework. And so it started off with seeing women, as equal and as different and as distinct, and then creating a strategy in all aspects. And that included how women were incarcerated, the programs and services, the way that, they were organized in terms of how they lived, that programs were not based on a men's program and then cookie cutter cut, then to, be available for men. They really were all redesigned from the ground up. So it was a very exciting time to be part of women's corrections and to be involved in that. And, in summary, really, we understood and learned that women's pathways into those systems were different, what contributed to, them committing crimes, that their trauma histories are different, their relationship dynamics are different, their cultural contexts were different, and that all women weren't the same. So that was an interesting experience that led to that system changing to better meet the needs of women. And that was a lot of learning for me to be part of that. So supporting women means valuing women at the very least. And in my experience, talking about women as women offenders, let's include them as clients. I've worked with a lot of women who are, employees and as leaders. And same themes, come through. Cultural context matters. Trauma matters. Identity matters. Women's experience as being different from men matters. And that we live in a system and in a society where those opportunities, barriers are prevalent because of who they are. And I always felt, and I still do, responsible to support women, to be able to move beyond some of that and to create changes in those systems, whatever way I can, so that they have, access to better services, and that change is moving things forward. So to truly support women, we have to create space so that women are seen and valued as differently, is not as less than. And that takes intentional effort. So as I've, moved, and I've worked in different systems, and, I'm just going to kind of take us to what I do today. And what I have been doing over the last, I guess, 8 to 10 years is that I work with Indigenous communities, and primarily I've landed in situations where I have been supporting these amazing Innu women in leadership roles. And I'm sure it hasn't been by accident, but it's been an amazing experience. And I've really learned and experienced, the barriers, the individual, the collective trauma, the systems, the colonial systems that have continued to create and more than create, have continued to cause harm. They're still alive and well. So what I've learned is that, women operate differently. Like my own personal experience, the Indigenous women, that I've worked with, they need to have an opportunity to be valued for how they work. So they need to have space to be able to build relationships. They need to have space to work collaboratively. And it's given me a better appreciation, even from an example last week, that one of, these amazing women that I work with, and she explained that, building relationships is not just for the sake of building better relationships, because if people like me from the outside who are non-Innu, who are working in those communities, are not listening and understanding about the impacts of trauma on their lives and their communities' lives and their children's lives, their families, then we're not going to be able to add value. And if I'm working in communities to support, their vision, their determination for the development of their laws, their programs, their services, well then, it's not much point of me being there. So it's deeper. It's a deeper level understanding of the value of relationships. And the magic that can happen when it is what I've observed, when those women have the opportunity to be authentic and to be themselves and to have control over their worlds, over their organizations, wonderful things can happen. So their confidence expands. They feel like it's possible for them to be able to create the changes that are going to create such big differences for their children and families. So specifically, right now, one of the major initiatives that I'm part of is that the Innu in Labrador, so the Innu Nation represented in both communities, the Shawashit and Natwashish, are creating their own Innu Child and Family Service Agency. So they will replace the provincial system of child welfare. So it's a big job. It's a huge initiative, but it's so important because we're recognizing, the harms. We're learning because there's currently an Innu inquiry into Innu's experience with the child protection system going on right now, which is highlighted, the historical current harms that have been created by that system, which is very similar to what we've learned and heard right across the country. So the job for Innu, who have, only really come in from the community in the last 60 years, they don't have the experience of building these organizations. They know how to parent, they know how to protect their children, but that's been so disrupted. And they're figuring out how to build a non-colonial, built system within a colonial systems-based world. So I've had to learn, to support them. And what I've seen is that when they are mentored, when they're supported, when they're given that space to be able to be their authentic selves and to teach us who they are, who their identity is, why culture is important, when they're able to speak in their own language, things change. When women can lead authentically, when they're valued for their strengths, when they're supported rather than reshaped by some system that pretends or acts like it knows better because it's been around longer, it hasn't worked and it won't work. So when girls see these women thrive, these mothers, these mentors, these leaders, these community builders, that has a positive impact on them. When they see their mothers and their sisters and their aunties participate in educational opportunities, as part of this vision for them to build their own services, their confidence increases. So these systems need to change. They need to change the systems, and we need to support that. So it's to give you, it's the tops of the trees overview of, what my experience has been, and a few things that hopefully points the light onto the barriers. I think to truly give to gain, we must move beyond celebrating women to intentionally valuing them in all of their diversity, their context, and their strength. Equality, of course, does not mean sameness. It means that women have to be seen as who they are, and we have to listen. In order to be supported effectively, we must see them as different. We design systems that recognize women's lived experience, their cultural context, and leadership strengths. We're not just strengthening individual women through that process. We strengthen institutions, families, communities. And when young girls see that kind of leadership model, they begin to believe they belong there too. So that's my thoughts on a little bit about my experience, and hopefully that's helpful and makes some sense. So thank you again for this opportunity to be part of this panel.
You're welcome, Michelle, and thank you. Thank you very much for some of those deep thoughts and sharing your experiences with us. We all really appreciated that. Thank you so much. And it's so good to hear that angle and perspective in relation to the indigenous community, because very few women that I know can share these experiences. And I know we're going to have questions for you and everybody else, and we're going to come back to that. But I'd like to introduce Kelly here now. Last but not least, and I'd like folks to remember we do have a fourth panelist. Unfortunately, she's in transit today and couldn't make the time that we have allotted for this, but she will be interviewed or have a conversation with me tomorrow. So we will have her as part of the panel. So don't worry, folks. You'll hear Dr. Mullings as well. But for now, of course, we will have Kelly, who is no stranger to Caribbean Connections. Kelly is a longtime feminist activist, a mom, and a women's empowerment specialist who lives in beautiful New Brunswick, Canada. She runs Strong Women Co., a company to help women be their strongest, happiest, and healthiest selves. With over 80,000 organic followers on social media, Strong Women Co. puts off workshops and programs to educate and empower, online and in person. Kelly also offers supportive and encouraging one-on-one programs for women looking to gain confidence and clarity on their path. Oh, and let's not forget the podcast, the Strong Women Power Half Hour, designed to help you on your path through womanhood. No matter if it's a corporate workshop on how to be a better communicator, or an online workshop in self-love or strong women of the world, Kelly is always working to help women grow, evolve, and be stronger so they can reach their goals and be the leaders of their lives, families, communities, and workplaces. The more women we have on decision-making bodies, the better for us all. I think this is your like 8th year with us in the panel, Kelly. You're a staple now, okay?
I told you, Sarojini, anytime you ask me to show up, I will be there. I love and adore you.
All right. Now, just a little bit, for like 3 years, I think you joined us from the Netherlands, and then the last two from New Brunswick, and now this one again. So I do want to thank you also for accepting my invite and accommodating us. But before we go any further, I would like to have your thoughts and perspective. And just like Sophia and Michelle, you have just got so much experience, personal and professional, from your travels and professional life to tell us about what you have seen with all women of all walks of life, of many different nationalities and diverse backgrounds. So give us your perspectives on the United Nations IWD theme for 2026, Rights, Justice, Action for All Women and Girls. Take it away, Kelly.
Thanks so much, Sarojini, and Michelle, and Sophia, and Dolores. I always agree to this, Sarojini, because I love the women you gather. And I always learn so much. And I love having different perspectives introduced to me. That is literally what I think is fun. I love that. It is my expanding of my mind. And so I guess I'll just do a little bit on me, so you know who I am. So I am from St. John's, Newfoundland, Portugal Cove originally, but grew up lived once I became an adult in the downtown St. John's life. My undergrad is in psychology, and I actually went into university to be a psychologist, but there was so much misogyny in psychology. I thought I was going to poke out my own eyes. So instead of, I was applying to grad school in psychology and grad schools in gender studies at the same time. And I was like, please don't get into psychology. And I didn't. And so I got into gender studies and I did my master's at MUN. And I will say what a fantastic program it is. There isn't a day that goes by that I do not use my gender studies master's. Me and my husband, I'll get to it a bit, but we have a giant company that works with specifically green energy, and we work with international people. We work with all kinds of things all the time, and we both talk about how we use my degree in gender studies way more than we use his degree in geology, because of the valuable things you learn when you learn about power, and you learn about people, and you learn about systems and structures and how those things all work. So when I was doing my grad studies, I also was a huge student activist, also in my undergrad. Everything from LGBT rights to rights for international students to have MCP, to lowering tuition, all those things. And then when I got into grad school, I also became a union activist and a labor activist, and I was a union organizer for a number of years. I've worked with 3 different unions organizing, where I go in, there's no union, and I leave, there's a union. That makes me feel very good. I can die knowing that there's at least 2 unions at MUN that would not be there for my hard work. Both the Teaching Assistants Union and the Lecturers Union, Lumen. I was on all of the union drives for that, and learned a heck of a lot through all of those things, including the power structures of big unions and the great and bad things with all of those too.
We will take a short break and be right back. Stay with us, please. Welcome back to Caribbean Connections International Women's Day 2026 special broadcast in collaboration with CHMR 93.5 FM and online www.chmr.ca. Now, let's continue with this amazing and invigorating discussion. Thank you.
So I was actually kind of sick of preaching to the choir by the time I finished my master's. And I was really itching to take that academic theory that I had learned out into the world. So I had the opportunity 2 days after I handed in my thesis to work with an all-male crew down in the States for a geoscience projects. I was looking for, I was totally out of my comfort zone and looking for copper and gold underground, again, with an all-male crew. I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about my leadership. I learned a lot about how easy it is to excel in male-dominated fields if you're a woman. I learned that my skill set is like hugely valuable because I am so organized, and if only I can be digestible to the men around me. This is kind of the reality that I did learn. So after that, I actually got trained very fast in that geoscience company. I was the first female crew chief they had. But there was a bunch of men in that company that kind of refused to work with me because I was a woman. And there was like this the kind of crux of that was there was a guy who was supposed to be training. He was a crew chief, and I was on his project to learn this new system, and he refused to talk to me. He refused to teach me. He refused. One word grunts is all I got out of him. And I got to the point similar to Michelle. It's like, I got skills. I got values. I'm still getting paid, but this is boring. So I went home and I started working at the Office to Advance Women Apprentices. I was the program director there. I was connecting companies with women in the apprentices and a wage subsidy. So I was like doing cold calls. Hey, I've got a 90% wage subsidy for you if you hire a woman apprentice. I got so many hangups. I got so many women can't do this job. This is in 2011. So it was like, wow, okay. And I worked with women on every kind of level, including the employment counselors, including helping them with their interviews, including just daily support, because so many of those women were in cycles of poverty and their families were not letting them out of cycles of poverty. I seen so many things. And from that job, I did a really good job, and I was headhunted to be the first woman carpenters unions rep. So I was the first woman in Newfoundland, Labrador to be an organizer and a business rep for the Carpenters Millwrights Union. I really liked that job. The job wasn't hard. It was good. I doubled the number of women while I was there. That was my goal. I went from 1% to 2%. But I eventually, my skill set, which is vast, became intimidating, particularly to one guy. There was most of the guys at the union were so appreciative of what I had to bring. But there was one guy in particular that just could not handle it. And there was a huge confrontation, and the lawyer had witnessed it, and blah, blah, blah. He was put on leave for 2 weeks, and when he came back, everyone asked how his vacation was. So, and because I had made a complaint, all of the people in the union stopped listening to me when I was supposed to be the boss. So frustrating. And then I had health issues, and my kidney stopped working because of stress, and blah, blah, blah. So I had to quit that job, like so many women have, because of misogyny and sexism. So that was 2012. And I remember going into 2012, not even know if I was going to survive. Like that, I was that stressed. 2013, I started again a job offer of a women resource development. I was designing and implemented programs for grade 9 girls to be exposed to trades and technologies. And for this, because they're more likely to go into trades and technologies, and that's where the money is. And money is power in this capitalist society. That's just our reality. I'm not happy about it, but it's just our reality. And if you want women to have power, they have to have a source of their own income, and a good source of their own income. And women get out of bad relationships. They leave bad toxic situations when they have money and they have choice. So that's one of my solid feminist values I could do, is like helping women have power and money is the same thing. Anyway, so I was doing a program for Techsploration. So I had grade 9 girls from all over Newfoundland and Labrador. We even had a group from Churchill Falls. And they all came to College of North Atlantic for this weekend called Techsploration. And I had each one of those grade 9 classes was paired up with a woman in a male-dominated field in industry. Industry was who was paying me, by the way. It was the money from them. It was who was paying me, mostly Exxon. Very complicated. But so we had a mobile crane operator, we had a millwright, we had a reservoir economist, we had like all these different, and each grade 9 girl was assigned to one of those women, and then they had to do a presentation. One of those women came up to me during one of our program, and she said, "Kelly, can you take my name off this program for next year?" And I said, "Of course, sure. Is everything okay?" And she said, you know, "This program is great. These girls are great. I just can't in good conscience tell any of them to come into my line of work." And she was a senior engineer in a very high up energy company. She wasn't, on the ground, blue collar with the trade boys. She was in an office, and she still to that she was like, I can't in good conscience say come into this work. It's death by 1,000 paper cuts. I can't. And so that really was a shift in me, because that was another woman who was experiencing something similar that I had. And I, being the type A I am, I sought out every bit of training or possibility or give me some system to deal with the misogyny I'm dealing with every day. I reached out to Workers' Comp. I reached out to the Federation of Labor. I reached out to all these people who I knew I was a very connected person, and no one had any answers for me. So I said, okay, I guess I got to come up with some answers. So I started a system, and I interviewed and went out for coffee with every woman in the male-dominated field I could. And I found out what worked, and I found out what didn't. And then I synthesized that into a system. And I started my own business called Strong Women Co. And I've done workshops all over Europe, and in St. John's, Newfoundland, different places in Newfoundland, about some organizations get me in, or corporations get me in, and it's about recruiting and retaining women. It's about highlighting the values of women. I cannot tell you. So this is the thing. So I've worked with women who are literally on social assistance, and I've also worked with women who are in the C-suite of executives. And their issues are so similar, it's depressing. Their issues of not having confidence in their strengths, their issues with not understanding self-care. So I started Strong Women Co. with doing this one-on-one program, which I love. I do a 3-month program that is for women in male-dominated fields, and I've never had to advertise. People just find me. And one of the things I love to see is, with the teeniest, tiniest bit of support, I watch women move mountains. If I have, so it's usually every 2 weeks, we have an hour-and-a-half session. The first 45 minutes is me listening to all of the crap, misogyny, and patriarchy they have to put up with. And then I give them the validation of, yeah, that sucks. Yeah, you shouldn't have to deal. Okay, this is why he said that. This is the power. And I just do that. And then we can talk about other things. But the women who are coming to me, I thought I designed my program to help women get to that next level of in their careers. But not a single woman that has come to me has ever needed help in that. They got that handled. What they don't have handled is their personal lives. What they don't have handled is figuring out how to put themselves first. What they don't have handled is they literally do not understand how to prioritize their own desires, because they do not understand how to even ask themselves these things. So I see the same things of the women in social assistance, the women I'm working with in transition houses, as the women in these C-suites. And like these women, I've spoken to senior executives of very high up energy companies, asking them what their 5 strengths are. And they say to me, I never thought about it. I never thought what my strengths were. And I just see the similarity in between us. And I see that there's so much work to do. And I hear the stories of my panelists, of Sophia and Michelle, and Sophia and your experiences rooted in India, and Michelle and so much of your experiences rooted in indigenous culture and realities. And here I am sitting as a presenting white woman, and I don't see us as much different. I see it as a thinly cloaked veil of who actually has rights and who actually has power. And the reality is, it's not. I say this with some delicateness, because I do know, as a woman in Canada, I obviously have more rights, but it doesn't always work out that way in reality. Sophia, when you were talking about you expecting to take care of your brothers and see to their needs, and I was too. That is how I became a feminist. How I became a feminist in the 80s in St. John's, Newfoundland, was that my brother didn't have the same responsibilities as I did. And that was not fair. And that continued on. And that was how I became this is not right kind of person. And It was just like my origin stories is I come by it honestly, right? And my family had several businesses, but I'm by far the most business aptitude person in the family, but I was never groomed to take it over. My brother, who had no interest whatsoever, still never touched it, was being groomed, and it was like, okay, it's still exact same things that we're seeing. So just to bring it to what we were saying, we're talking about rights, we're talking about justice, we're talking about action. And for me, each IWD, I'm always asked to do a bunch of these things in IWD. And sometimes I approach IWD with optimism and hope and passion. And sometimes I approach IWD with righteous anger and rage. And I'm in a righteous anger and rage season right now. And it's because, well, the Epstein files have really shown us that we can pretend that girls have rights. We can pretend white girls have rights, but they don't. There are so many systems, so many people upholding those systems to ensure that no girl, no woman anywhere has rights. So in this moment of my sacred rage season, I am beginning to ask, how do we get real power? How do we get real rights? How do we get real justice? And I am thinking it's got to be outside the colonial powers. It's got to be beyond the structure. Sure, yes, we do need the liberal feminists in there too. Yes, please, they are saving people. But beyond that, I want to look to the radicals who are actually reclaiming their bodies, their lives, their culture. And who I'm looking to is South Korean women and the 4B movement. And for those people who don't know about the 4B movement, bi means no in Korean. So it means no sex with men, no dating men, no marrying men, and no children with men. And why women in South Korea in particular have gotten to that extreme extent is the extreme misogyny in South Korea. You combine that with South Korea's women being the most educated in the world. They're the most educated in the world, but they also make about 1/3 of what women in Canada make in comparison. There's the misogyny, the giant fissure is grotesque in Korea. And this is actually affecting their birth rate hugely. And South Korean women are saying, I would rather my people die. I would rather my people die than to continue this subjugation of my people, women. South Korean women are saying, I am refusing to have a child that may be a son and grow up to further subjugate and objectify me. And I see them and I see this power, and it's going beyond Korea. It has trickled, of course, into everywhere that anyone who has internet. I see young women in the Western world incorporating this kind of informally in a way of like, they feel like men their age just have not kept up with modernity and are not flexible and adaptable enough to be in a relationship that women are expecting right now. So I see so many of my young women friends, white women, saying that having a boyfriend is embarrassing. Mm-hmm. So I'm seeing us take our power in various ways. And yes, through structurally, and I'm so grateful for the work that Sophia and Michelle and Dolores do with her critical race theory. And yes, keep it going. But I'm going to say, if we really want to take our rights and our power and our justice, we got to think outside the box, because we're not asking anyone for it. We're just going to go take it. And I'll close with saying thank you so much to every strong woman I've ever had in my life that showed me that we didn't just have to take it, and showed me that we can refuse to deal with this BS, and that can be the change we're actually looking for. Told you I was spicy.
Wow, Miss Kelly. Well, if that wasn't a firecracker perspective, I don't know what is. Thank you, thank you, thank you. That was indeed very eye-opening too. And I know we all have A lot of questions for you, and of course, Sophia and Michelle. Dr. Dolores V. Mullings is a nationally and internationally respected senior academic leader, scholar, and keynote speaker whose work examines equity, anti-racism, leadership, and institutional transformation. She most recently served as Vice Provost, Equity, Diversity, Inclusion, and Anti-Racism, where she established a university-wide EDI-AR office, led large-scale multi-campus consultations, and advanced policy, governance, and community partnership across sectors. A full professor and trained social worker, Dr. Mullings brings an intersectional racial justice-centered lens to leadership and organizational change. She is the co-editor of In Her Arms, Love and Legacy of Black Mothers and Daughters, and is widely sought after for her candid, insightful keynote addresses on power, governance, race, gender, and institutional accountability. She is also a poet, with her forthcoming collection, Black Girl in the Ring, to be released in the spring of 2026. Good evening, Dr. Mullings. How are you doing today?
Good evening, Sarojini, my friend and superstar DJ. I'm doing quite well, thank you. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
It's our pleasure, and I know you are a busy, busy woman. In fact, you just came into Newfoundland last night and you went out early this morning, and now you're at a conference in Ottawa. So I am so happy we were able to get you for this window of opportunity. So thank you also for accommodating us.
My pleasure. This is an important conversation.
Thank you.
And it's important we make time.
Oh, awesome. I appreciate that, Dr. Mullins. I really do. And today's theme, we discussed earlier, the United Nations Rights, Justice, Action for All Women and Girls. And its campaign theme is Give to Gain. I'd like you to address either one or both. You can certainly introduce your topic and what it's all about. Take it away, Dr. Mullins.
Thank you. So my discussion focuses on the architecture of justice. And I have, in this discussion, then I'll focus on rights, global leadership, and the blueprint for gender parity. And so for me, this paper serves, or this discussion serves as a formal rejection of passive inclusion in favor of systemic justice when it comes to women in leadership. So I begin by speaking briefly about leadership as a human right. And so in 2026, we are past the point of quote unquote making the case for women in leadership. We are now in the era of rights and justice. So despite representing half the population, women hold only a fraction of the world's most powerful roles. Excuse me. This is not a pipeline problem. We like to say, you know, we don't have enough women in the pipeline. It's actually not true. It is a justice gap, and this gap is deliberate. If you sit around tables with people who hold power, you will see why it's deliberate. It's very difficult for people to shift to the places that we need to go to. And so for me, justice is not served until the rooms where the world's most important decisions are made actually reflect the world they impact. So the women need to be reflective of those decision makers around the table. And I'm not talking about one-dimensional women. I'm talking about women in our glory, in our multiple ways of being, in our social locations, in our in all our roles and responsibilities. So today we move the conversation from participation to power. Sometimes women are afraid of this word power. And I think this is one of the things we just need to embrace, because that's where the decisions are made. So I now speak about the archetype of power, and I use Prime Minister Mia Mottley of Barbados as one of the beacons for me and one of my role models in what women in leadership could potentially look like. When we look to Prime Minister Mia Mottley, of course, Barbados, she's not just a leader, but she's an archetype. She's an architect. Her leadership on the Bridgetown Initiative have redefined what senior leadership looks like on a global scale. She hasn't just managed a nation. She has challenged the entire global financial architecture. She's demanded the World Bank and the IMF provide debt pauses for climate vulnerable nations. Prime Minister Mottley proves that senior women's leadership is synonymous with global sustainability. And I find her so inspirational. I listen to her tapes. I watch her live at the United Nations. I watch her doing all kinds of what we would call advocacy in various places. And I absolutely love her work. And she asked, when will leaders lead? And further, she says, our world is 24 hours away from a climate event and what we are now calling climate crisis. We're not even saying anything less than that. We're saying it's a climate crisis. But she says, but only 1 hour away from a solution if we have the will. And so she has consistently said, we don't care enough as people on this planet, and challenging the leaders around the table, saying that they don't really care enough to make a change to this climate crisis. Prime Minister Mottley's work illustrates that women, when they lead, they don't just protect a bottom line, and I put bottom line in quotations, they protect the survivability of the planet. And so I turn now to the African blueprint, and I'll speak about this a little bit, but the African blueprint really, they're leading by mandate. While the global north often speaks of slow progress, and I put those in quotations as well, African nations are providing the blueprint for rapid justice-based parity. And so I wonder what people think about when they say, Africa is behind. Rwanda, for example, leading the world with nearly 64% of women in parliament. This is not a coincidence. This was achieved through a constitutional mandate that recognized gender balance as a post-genocide necessity for national healing. So we're seeing what happens when you actually plan. In Senegal, through the 2010 parity law, they moved from suggestion, in quotation, to requirement, ensuring candidates list alternate by gender. They're not joking. In South Africa, with a cabinet that consistently mirrors the population, South Africa demonstrates that gender balanced governance leads to more robust social policy. And I will put a little caveat in here, because I know that, people may be wondering, well, if South Africa is so robust with gender parity, why is there, this large scale violence against women? And what I will say is this: I'm not South African, so I cannot really speak to that. What I can speak to is the work that I see the women and others doing to combat gender violence. And also, we need to remember that gender violence didn't just start happening today or in 1995. It's historical, and gender violence happens right across the country. So I wanted to put that in case people were a little bit wondering about South Africa. So I continue to say, these nations prove that parity is not a future goal. It is a present day political choice. The word choice here is important, and it's deliberate. So I want to talk now about sustainability and capacity building. This, to me, is one of the most important areas when it comes to women in leadership. And so leadership is a journey. It's not a destination. Mm-hmm. To sustain this justice, we must invest in capacity building that mirrors the life cycles of women. We're not just baby machines, and some people choose not to have babies. So it's important that we look at the entire life cycle. The sustainability link. So organizations like women in senior leaderships are statistically more likely to meet carbon reduction goals. This is because women leaders often prioritize intergenerational justice, the 7-generation principles of stewardess that many Indigenous groups across Canada speak to. So strategic capacity as well is important. So initiatives like Women Lift Health. This is a global nonprofit organization dedicated to achieving gender equity in senior health leadership. By empowering women, mid-career women through leadership journeys, they do mentorship and coaching. And to quote this group, they say they want to quote, unleash and elevate talented mid-career women to become global health leaders, increasing gender, well, they said equality, I'll just say gender equity. Mm-hmm. And they're currently training women in 2026, a 2026 cohort, they say, focusing on leadership journeys. And rather than doing workshops, for example, right? Mm-hmm. And this builds a network of elder stewardship that preserves institutional memory and builds a bridge for the next generation. This bridge building is very important in African cultures, many African cultures. If you kind of look at even the principles of Sankofa, where people look behind in order to learn from the past so that it informs the future. And we see that with the elders passing down knowledge to the younger people. So this is not new. It's just we are doing it differently, and it's important that we find different ways to hold on to this stewardess. And so I conclude then with a call to action. This is not difficult. Justice is not a destination, as I said. We reach through patience. It is a structure. Hold on. Justice is not a destination we reach through patience. And some of us actually, people will say that we're impatient. We're actually not impatient. We're reasonable. Mm-hmm. We're reasonable. Only people who are sitting at the seat of power tend to say people need to be patient. Those that are on the ground, trying to make changes, advocating, looking at justice in different ways, none of us in those positions are talking about patience. So it is important that we understand it is a structure we build through policy. If Rwanda can lead the world in representation, and if Prime Minister Mia Mottley can shift the focus of the UN and the IMF, then there is no excuse for any board or organization or institution, college, university, hospitals, government, to claim that parity is too difficult. It is not difficult. So we're not asking for a seat as a favor. No, we are claiming a seat as a right, because without women's leadership, there's no sustainability, and without sustainability, there is no future. And I want to add that all women are not synonymous. We're not one-dimensional caricatures. We have different ideas, feelings, aspirations. However, we can still make a difference in what the world look like now and in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mullins. This is fantastic. And oh my gosh, you said So many wonderful things. Like, I was very much taken by your research in that Rwanda leads the world in women representation. Like, I remember seeing on the news war-torn Rwanda, things flying all over the place, poverty, no water, no food, people in tattered clothing looking for their next meal, and now we hear this.
Yeah.
Why do you think this is in Rwanda?
So it's okay. You can call me Dolores as well.
Okay, thank you. I to be on the safe side, they say ear on the good side. Okay, Dolores, go on. Thank
Yeah.
you.
So the thing is, it's intentionality, right? There were built, they intentionally built what they wanted to see in the future in their constitutions. They didn't just sit around and says, oh, it would be really nice if we did this or if we did that. No, they said, in order for us to achieve this, we need to bake it into our constitution. And so I understand that you cannot necessarily legislate behavior because sometimes things are in constitutions and people don't do them anyways. We're seeing that right across the world right now, right? But when you take an equity lens, a racial justice, global justice, equity lens, then you cannot go wrong in putting things in your constitution. When it goes sideways is when people are doing it because they're trying to hold people back or they're trying to use constitutions or policies to punish people or to bar them or to keep them out of places or to scrutinize their bodies or what's the other thing? Marginalize them, police them, and sort of get them to do what they want in short order, right? We don't want to use constitutions or policies for those reasons. We want to use those documents to move things forward, to make life better for every human on the planet.
Absolutely.
Every living thing on the planet, in fact, right?
I love how you said that without women leadership, there's no sustainability and no future. So here in Canada, and I know you've got events happening soon, so you let me know when you've got to leave. And I have one more question after this. But in Canada, what do you think we can do to promote more women leaders in top positions, especially in government and in politics?
The blueprint is there. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. Blueprint is there. We've seen South Africa, we've seen Rwanda, we've seen, I think maybe the Netherlands. We've seen some of the places where even Brazil have a high percentage of women, and Jamaica, Nigeria, high percentage of women in leadership, not just politics, but leadership in general. So that's already been achieved. It's just that in Canada, we're actually behind. We like to think that because we're in the global north and we're part of this Western world that we've cornered the market on civility and advancement. And in fact, we've seen that that's not true when it comes to, women in politics, for example. I mean, one of the things that happens is not only do we need to have these things written in our constitution across the country, in our policies across the country, and then we actually need to act, right? You cannot, nothing happens without action, right? Nothing happens without action. The thing is, though, there are different parts of the society that's also responsible, because sometimes what happens, the news media and people in the population speak about women's hair and clothing and things that has nothing to do with their jobs. We don't talk about the men, people will even body shame women politicians. We don't do that with everybody, so we need some sense of accountability and responsibility when it comes to honoring women's achievements and roles and responsibilities in their respective offices, regardless of what they look like. And I think the other thing to consider is we really need nuanced, diverse perspectives. So that what I mean by that is here in this province, Laura Bell Mba ran for politics, right? The first Black woman to run for politics in this province, right? And so while this province continues and have been calling for people to come to this province, the question is, how are these people or these groups of people who are being beckoned to represented in politics, in the highest places in government, in academic institutions? Memorial University, for example, is one of the places that are the highest, employs the most people. One of the institutions, that employs the most people. And if they're women, what do these women look like? Are they just one group of women, or what is it? So we need nuanced, diverse voices, right? So that for me is part of the key as well. And also, women are humans. We were raised and socialized in these environments. So we are going to have characteristics of our environment. And what that means is that we're never going to be perfect. We're never going to be, this person that never makes a mistake or doesn't disagree with people, or, just carry on no matter what. It means that we're going to have bumps in the road. However, that's being human. We have bumps in the road all the time in all parts of our lives. So when women are leading, it doesn't mean that we shouldn't expect bumps in the road. And we also need to give them some grace and be a little bit more patient, because while women are in these leadership positions, they're still parenting.
Yes.
And sometimes part of the sandwich generation where they're parenting parents. I'm one of those. Parenting parents and parenting children. No, I don't have tiny children anymore, but a lot of women are doing that.
Oh, absolutely. And you give some really wonderful, striking examples of the African nations doing, in some ways, much better than us here in the West. Like you said, Rwanda, in Senegal, and in South Africa, gender balanced government. So, and I'll let you go because I know you're there for a conference in Ottawa. What are some of your closing thoughts? And I'll now pivot that to Newfoundland and Labrador, where you spend a lot of your time after served on many boards and communities and being a full professor here at Memorial. What are your closing thoughts for Newfoundland and Labrador to push us forward to have maybe gender balanced government and gender balanced workplace, see more women in power in Newfoundland and Labrador? What are your thoughts on that?
I'm always hopeful. No matter what the situation looks like, I am always hopeful. And so I go back to Laura Bell Mba, who just ran for politics.
Right.
When I see people like her putting themselves on the line so that we can have some alternatives to the status quo, I am hopeful, because guess what? Somebody else saw that. Somebody else saw that. I also want to say that there are a number of organizations here in the province that are very focused on having more women, supporting women to run for office, and having more women in office. So there is a robust community here as well. Equal Voices, I think, NL.
Yes.
I think so. And somebody else comes to mind too. I think Professor Dr. Amanda Bittner from Memorial, who is in political science, I think, continues to do some work in her own scholarship as well. And so that gives me hope that people are not folding up and playing dead and feeling badly because during these trying times, it is easy to just fold our arms or turn our heads the other way and says, we're exhausted from what's happening in the environments here at home, here in the province, globally. There is no easy place as I see it right now. There's no easy place and there's no resting place. But I remain hopeful that this too shall pass. This is what I say every time something goes. My grandmother used to say, this, nothing is forever. When the times are great, a friend of mine sent me something this morning and reminded me that when the times are good, I say great, to enjoy them. And when the times are not so great, remember that it's not going to last forever. It'll change. Right?
I like that. I really do,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this will change. And what we need to do is work together at the moment to implement change before the appointed time. Because as you know, my friend, is that we actually need to plan, strategize, and lay the foundation for things today in order to see them 5 and 10 years from now. Right? It's all about planning. We're not going to get to where we want to get to if we wait 5 years and then we say, oh, we have to do this. No.
Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic. Dolores, thank you so very much. I'm so happy we managed to get you for this window of opportunity in Ottawa, but thanks to Zoom, we were able to complete our broadcast here in collaboration with CHMR, International Women's Day 2026. I look forward to meeting you when you come back to Newfoundland and Labrador. So thank you, and good luck with everything tonight. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Enjoy your conference.
Thank you.
Again, and I'll keep in touch.
All right. Take
Bye
care.
bye.
Bye for now.
Bye. And before we let our questions escape our minds here, we could maybe circle back to each other now. How do you guys feel about it? Can we do that now? Okay, let's go for it. Sophia, seeing that you were first, I'll start and then we can take it away with the other women. Of course, I grew up in Bangalore and Dubai, and you came to Canada in 2014. So I am curious from your perspective, knowing the rights of women in Bangalore and in Dubai, which you have so wonderfully explained here today. When you arrived in Canada and you saw women, not only white Canadian women, but women of all nationalities, you saw the rights that they had or were having in Canada. What went through your mind?
Yeah, that's a great question, Sarojini. I actually had to go back in time and try to think of how I actually felt when I first arrived. And
It seems so long ago, huh? Like, what is
it
it?
does. 12 years. Oh my.
Wow.
That's a good time. But yeah, when I look back, I think there's different layers to this. Of course, I remember my first thought when I landed here was I felt free. I felt for the first time that I could just be myself. I could do whatever I wanted. I could go where I wanted without, without being with a man. Like I was always told to, go with my brother everywhere I went, even though he was younger than me when I was a child. I'm like, what is my younger brother going to do for me? I don't really know. But like I think just realizing that actually I can take care of myself, and actually I'm strong, and I'm independent, and I can protect myself, and I have dreams and goals, and I can achieve all of those things. And it was very empowering and freeing to know that those were all possibilities, and I didn't have to look to a man for approval or for permission or for anything really to go after that. But I did also have other challenges, I think, just with the intersectionality of being a woman, being a person of color, and being an immigrant. Like I was always made very aware of the color of my skin, and my accent, and people always ask me where am I from, and how I speak such good English. So I think over time, being asked that so many times, especially in Newfoundland, I think, yeah, as much as initially I was like, oh, these people are just curious, they want to learn about me, like they're so nice, they're showing so much interest. But today I'm a Canadian citizen, and people still ask me the question, and I'm still hesitant to say, like, actually I'm Canadian now, and they would still be like, oh, but where are your parents from, where are your ancestors from? Like, they just want to know, like, where did I get this brown skin from? So so there are other challenges that I had to face with that, which has been sometimes isolating and felt like I wasn't really welcome, as much as I do consider Newfoundland my home and Canada my home today. Yeah, there were pros and cons, I think, to both. Some rights that that I do have here, I don't have back home, and and back home, like, I'm invisible, and people don't look at my skin color or don't ask me all these questions. I feel like I'm one of them, which is a challenge that I face here, and I always feel like I'm very conscious and aware of my skin and being a woman and being an immigrant and all of that. So yeah, so it is a complicated question, but yeah, it's been a learning experience, and it's something that I continue to navigate and try to learn and do my best. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you, Sophia. Thank you so much. Michelle and Kelly, do you have any questions for Sophia? Your burning questions. Take it away.
I got one if you want to go. Sophia, I have a question for you. I'm interested in it sounds like, well, the word concept I know is code switching. So I have to do code switching when I go from my male dominated work to, like, be around my friends. I have to code switch. I have to change how I speak. I change how I move my body. And my girlfriends let me know, because they're like, Kelly, put your elbows down. Kelly, stop yelling at us. Right? Like this, I have to code switch. Because if I go in with my femme nature in the workplace, I'm not getting paid attention to. No one's listening to me, and I'm just not effective. So my question is, the code switch you have to do, where you go from, you went from Indian values, Canadian values, Canadian values in India. So I wonder how that works for you.
Yeah, that is a great question, and it just reminds me of this time. I was in an argument, or I had a conversation with someone in my family, like, not a good kind of conversation, and they knew very well of my my activist days and how I'm loud spoken, and like all the things that I've done ever since I came to Canada, and the stance I take, and all of that. And I remember one time they told me, like, you know what, like, keep all these qualities of yours and this standing up and, like, for equality and all of that back with you in Canada. Like, don't bring that here. And I was like, excuse me, what? Like, do you want me to become another person? Like, how is that even possible? Is there technology in this day and age to just be someone else and just leave parts of you behind? And I just remember, like, that moment, because I was just like, how men have this expectation to, like, abandon parts of yourself which are so core to who you are, just because it makes them uncomfortable and makes them, like, if you're holding them accountable, or they don't want to face the reality of how they're treating you, or when you're standing up for yourself. So yeah, it is challenging, because at times that I do need to put up a more stronger front when I go back home, and I need to, like, mentally prepare myself for all the questions and all the comments and everything that's gonna come at me. So yeah, it is definitely something that I think I do unconsciously. I didn't know there was a word for it, so I'm glad to learn that today. That has been insightful, and yeah, wow, like, I guess there's more people than just me who do it, so that's an interesting thing to learn. But yeah, it's definitely something that, I have to like brace myself, and I feel like I have to like prepare myself and be stronger and more thick-skinned. And when I go back home, and I feel that weight lifted off when I come back to Canada. And it's really sad because you want, when you go home, like, you want to be yourself, you want to be free, you want to just, it's a place you're supposed to feel safe. um but I think that's where I'm torn, and that's where I have multiple homes, because there's different parts of me that um feel safe in different places. And it's hard to have my whole self, I think, show up um, in just one place. So home is a very hard question for me, or a hard place for me to answer. But yeah, it's definitely like an interesting experience to have to, yeah, switch my own mentality. And even when I come to Canada, like, I then have to like speak differently. Like, I have to make sure that like my accent is not coming out, or like when I go back home, usually like I don't really think about like how I'm speaking, but I'm more aware of that here. So it's a little bit of both, I think. Yeah, both places. So hopefully that answers your question.
Thank
I
you,
just want to say
Sophie.
there's a podcast called Code Switch that NPR put out, and it helped me so much because I began to understand the extra work that immigrants and people who are not in the dominant culture have to put up with. And so that's where it really helped me understand the extra work. So yeah, NPR Code Switch, if you're ever interested, there's tons of people with your similar experience.
So thank you. Thank you, Sophie and Michelle. Do you have any burning questions you want to ask away to
Um,
Sophia?
I do. I was thinking, Sophia, thank you for sharing that. That's okay. I'm just wondering if there are any, couple of pieces of advice that you can give us, those of us who are doing our best in the field, advice for us as individuals, or for us who have some ability to navigate systems and influence systems. Like, are there some things that we can focus on that can help move the change button forward, to advocate for new Canadians, for immigrants, just in our day to day, that maybe we're not thinking about, or we can focus on a bit more?
Sure. That's a great question, and I feel so much responsibility right now, but hopefully I can answer that. I guess one thing I will say is, as a new Canadian or as an immigrant who arrives here, most people, they have so much experience. They're so knowledgeable. They're smart. They're intelligent. They're resilient. They have the courage to move their families, and sometimes not often from like good situations. Um, but I think a struggle that I've seen in many newcomers is the struggle to get their foot in the door. And I feel like most people, we're constantly trying to prove that we're worth it. And we're constantly hoping that someone will give us a chance. I know that there is a lot of competition out there. There's a lot of good people with a lot of good experience, but I feel like some of the things which newcomers don't have, for example, sometimes we might not have um, a reference in Canada. Sometimes we may, not still have work experience in Canada, but we probably have like tens and so many years of experience back home. So I feel like, especially with employers, I think, I always think like, I wish someone could just give them a chance. Just give them one chance. Just see how it goes. Just have some faith and, like believe in them. Believe in their experience, in their capabilities, in their ability to learn, to contribute. And, all we want to do is contribute to society, is want to give our best, is provide for our families, have a better life. So I think really, if you are in a position where you can give somebody a chance, even if they may not fit all your requirements and may not have everything that you need as per the book. I think it would be worth it. And I think sometimes we forget that we're, all human beings. We're all trying to get through life, and we all have, our own personal challenges and things going on. So it's hard sometimes to like that we forget the person behind these resumes and job applications and whatnot. So yeah, I think that would be my only advice if you ever have an opportunity to give a newcomer a chance. To maybe.
It's great advice. Thank you.
Thank you for asking that question, Michelle. I really appreciate it.
We will take a short break and be right back. Stay with us, please. Welcome back to Caribbean Connections International Women's Day 2026 special broadcast in collaboration with CHMR 93.5 FM and online www.chmr.ca. Now, let's continue with this amazing and invigorating discussion. Thank you.
And if it comes up, because I used to do a lot of work with diversity, equity, and inclusion, there's a business case to be made that when you hire international people who are diverse, there is an increase in efficiency. There's a decrease in interpersonal drama, because that's what happens when you have to slow down your communication. That's actually one of the biggest benefits of a diverse workplace is less interpersonal drama. And it's because and because if you're both struggling to communicate, you're just happy when you get that communications. You're not necessarily reading into things. So there's a huge benefit for us to reaching out to people who look different than us, believe different than us, and might have been raised different than us in the workplace.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you again, Sophia. And thank you, Michelle, for those wonderful questions. And going back to you, Michelle, I was wondering, I know you've done a lot of work in both the public and private sectors in many leadership roles. And the last few years, you've been going back and forth to Labrador, working with various Indigenous communities. And I am curious, as a white woman going into these communities, how was the reception with you trying to organize and devise a plan so that, as you mentioned, to give women a space to work collaboratively, and as a white woman going in to set examples and explain to people what would work? What was that reception like for you?
It's a good question, and it's an important question. Because there is a thing about white women going into Indigenous communities, with our collective toolboxes, thinking that we have something to offer and we're here to help. And there's a long legacy of non-Innu, and I use the word Innu generically because the word Innu means human. So when you say Innu, it can mean, generically Indigenous, but there's a long history, of non-Innu going into Indigenous communities. So, for me, I had previously, I had the experience working in my, corrections world of working with Indigenous communities and that work, as offenders were being released into community, sort of building bridges with communities. And I also saw in those institutions, Correctional Service of Canada was somewhat progressive, even back to the 90s in terms of offering Indigenous focused programming. They had sweats, they had elders, they had, cultural programs and areas. So I saw, that respect that was given to Indigenous offenders. And I always thought it was something quite progressive. And I was happy to see that and to be part of that. And, I as I moved into this kind of work, I just came with, humility and an openness and a willingness to learn. And I never saw myself as the expert. I saw myself as a facilitator of knowledge. I have something to offer here, but this is your community. This is your space. You have the solutions. You are the experts of your communities, of your lives. And if there's some way that I can bring something that you need, that can assist with your ability to make the decisions you need for your individual and collective healing and strengthening your capacity and the ability, to expand Innu-led programs and services. That's what I can bring. I got a lot of stuff in my toolbox. I've got a lot of experience, and I know I come from a place where I do, have some experience and expertise, and that could, bring value. But it's up to you if you want it, because this is your game, this is your place, it's your home. So that was my approach, and I guess it's worked, because I continue to do some really amazing work with such amazing people.
Thank you. I like how you approached it and said you're going in from the point of view as a facilitator, that you have the answers, you have the ability, you have the skill, the talent, the education. I am here to facilitate. I like that. Thank you, Michelle. Sophia, any burning questions for Michelle? And then we'll go over to Kelly here.
Michelle, I recall, I think my first year in university, I think there were a couple students doing some kind of a project, and they came up to me and interviewed me, and they asked me, who do you think are more endangered and at risk of being killed in Canada? Do you think it would be white women, or would it be Indigenous women? And I was like, well, it can be Indigenous women. This is their home, like this is their land. Like why would it be them? Like this is where they belong. And they were like, oh, okay, I thank you for your answer. And they had like a screening and everything after. And I think it was just a couple weeks since I came to Newfoundland and started at MUN. But yeah, everything I learned since then about missing and murdered Indigenous women has been absolutely shocking and heartbreaking. I guess my question to you is, I was wondering, in your experience, what I learned was so many years ago, and I know there's a lot of work that has been done since then, but I was wondering, in your experience, have you seen any changes in Canada and Newfoundland, or in these Indigenous communities? Or is there something that, we wouldn't be aware of, having not, interacting with Indigenous communities as often, that you can share with us?
In terms of the overrepresentation of Indigenous people generally who are at risk of harm or death within our country? Well,
I guess I'm just wondering, things have gotten a bit better, or are we, or is there still a lot of work to be done, and where are we currently at, I guess?
Well, I mean, it's a hard question for me to answer, because I'm not an Indigenous person. So first of all, I want to qualify that. I think to really get that answer, you have to speak to Indigenous people around, what they see and feel. And I think it varies from one community to another, from one part of the country to the other. I think we've made some gains in the country in terms of the impact of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. I think there's a lot more awareness. We've had this huge Canadian Human Rights Tribunal ruling, which has basically said that Canada has discriminated against Indigenous children, and has awarded, the final agreement is not in place, but up to $40 billion to support communities to build prevention services. And that has really forced the hand of government to increase funding in Indigenous communities. What I will say is that on the ground, there's still lots of harm and discrimination happening at all levels. what I'll say is that the outcomes of Indigenous people in terms of health is still, without having any stats in front of me, the social determinants of health are pretty low, from, maternal health and prenatal and all everything, disease, illness, death. Indigenous people in our country still have a very low expectancy, life expectancy. I think it's like 49 years old. Now, maybe that's not the right number, because it varies in different communities, but it's significant. So, and there are other, I could go on, for hours, about, the different, pieces of legislation and big, changes that are made, politically in different provinces and within the country. And, what I also will say is that Indigenous people are getting stronger all the time, and are making so much progress in so many different fields, and are leading the way, to change, and will change a lot of our systems and structures that need to change. They are, and they will continue to be the leaders. And I believe that in terms of the area around child welfare, Indigenous child welfare will change child welfare in our country broadly. Like it will lead more change to that system. That it's a terrible system on many levels. So there's no easy answer, and I just think that there's been lots of positive gains and changes from an observer, looking, but we still have a long way to go. We have a long way to go before we have, equality and justice. And I would say, for men and women, but for women and girls, it's even more so, because our patriarchy has managed to, influence dynamics in Indigenous communities that once were more, egalitarian and had a lot of value for women and children. It has certainly been affected and disrupted by our, colonial ways. So it's not a simple answer.
Thank you for that, Michelle. I appreciate it.
Sorry.
Question, though.
Yeah, very good question. And thank you, Michelle. Thank you very much. Kelly, anything
Yes.
you'd like to fire
Yes.
away to Michelle?
Many things going on in my head right now. Right off the bat, I want to thank Sophia for helping my Canadianness forget how we tell our story to the rest of the world, so that we forget how horrific we've been to our Indigenous people, so that our new immigrants are like, what? But Canada's great. So thank you, Sophia. My apologies. When you were asking that question, my mic was off. And if anyone hears in the great, it's like weird. I said weird question. When you said that, I was like, because as a Canadian, like that's like a loaded question. It's like, is a conservative asking this? So thank you, Sophia, for opening my eyes in that. Sometimes I forget that we have told so many lies about ourselves, that we talk about our Indigenous people, or we admit, talk about our Indigenous people to preserve our world stage presence. But that being said, the song Child Protection by Eastern Owl keeps coming up in my head. I don't know if you guys know that, but it is one of the most beautiful, heart-wrenching songs that explains the child protection system, the colonial child protection system, and how it seems like they can't find an Indigenous mother good enough to keep her children, kind of thing. So I'd highly recommend listening to that. And then in addition to that, Michelle, you when you talked, you spoke a lot about a sentence that you kept saying that stuck with me is like, women are different.
Mm-hmm.
And you kept saying women are different. And I was so happy that someone was finally saying this, because I find I meet a lot of resistance
Mm-hmm.
to people who don't want to believe or don't want to say, or maybe honestly, it's a lot of resistance from the extreme left of people worrying about biological determinism or some kind of thing where it's like, if you say a gender's this thing and a gender's this thing,
Mm-hmm.
like that's a problem. It's like, yes, I know. But then there's also this lived reality we have that we aren't raised in a vacuum and that there are differences. I will also, in my 44 years, I have learned that there are different issues biologically also inside of us. My trans brothers and sisters have taught me what hormones can do
Yeah,
in your emotions and your bodies and all these things. So we are different. And pretending we're not is really just selling, lies. And then what's the purpose of those lies? The purpose of those lies is to pretend that the male standard is the norm.
exactly.
It's the metric.
That's it.
Right? And so I was so pleased to hear you talk about how women are different and how women's programs are different and all of that. And I had wondered if you had met resistance to trying to use your anecdotal lived experience, your actual evidence-based data. Had you met the same kind of resistance I had when I suggest that women need different services, different programs, different supports?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Kelly. I really appreciate that.
But yeah, so Michelle, have you?
I'm reflecting now and I'm thinking, well, I mean, yes, of course, there's resistance, and there was a lot of resistance in our country for women offenders being recognized as distinct and different and needing things. It took, a lot of bad things to happen to women before those changes were made. And even within that system, it was very difficult to get to a place where that happened. And it took a lot of voices and advocacy. And I was, part of that system when they were building all those women's institutions after they closed prison for women. And it was monumental to get to that place. So, yes. And it also makes me think about, how I'm just going to move this over to Indigenous people for a moment, but Indigenous people have not been seen as distinct. And in Newfoundland, if anybody sort of knows this little piece of history, when we came into Confederation, Joey Smallwood is known as quoting that there are no Indians here. So, that's his famous quote. So Indigenous people in this province, we're behind in our province in terms of respect for, understanding of, education of, an appreciation for the differences. So, I think, yes, there's been a lot of resistance. But me personally, I suppose, yeah, but it hasn't, I don't know, it hasn't sort of affected me in my work. It's sort of part of it, it's part and parcel. Whenever you're working with a group of people that have less power, that services are not equitable, like services for Indigenous people have been designed for white people forever, and they all suffer. And women suffer more in those systems because they have more barriers, because they're all designed mostly for men. So I just operate within that lens, I guess, and I talk about it in that way, and I live that way, and I understand it. And when I'm challenged by it, I guess I just go back to it, of course, like and we try to give examples of how, so say the women Indigenous women that I work with in, there are many roles. And I mean, I do work with some men, but mostly I work with women who are amazing. And I think, you'd have to speak to them around their experience as Indigenous women, of course. But, given this, like I said, the space, the respect, the support, the mentorship, and then the other piece of it is helping them to build the systems that they need so they can thrive. They determine what that is. And they're trying to build systems so that, all of their people succeed. And I see that a lot of the women are the ones that are moving into those leadership roles. So whether the discrimination is equal for Indigenous women and men, and women for whatever reason or because of their history and their strength are rising into those roles, I don't know. Like, I don't know. I haven't really thought about it a lot. I'm kind of just accepting what I see, and the discrimination is so widespread, the inequity and inequality is so widespread that they're trying it's just everywhere. So I don't know about specifically for women, but definitely, generally for Indigenous people, it's been widespread, and they have to rebuild from the ground up. And there's a recognition in a lot of corners around that, but generally in the public, in the general population, I have a lot of conversations with people, who don't understand, because we've never really had public conversations. People haven't learned the truth, in school or in many of our systems. So I don't know if I answered you.
If I may say, I have a 10-year-old, and her school does a deep dive every year into Indigenous rights, Indigenous history, Indigenous Day, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, the residential schools, all of it. She comes home and she's telling me everything. Do you know what the Canadian government did to Indigenous kids, Mom?
Good.
Like, she is like, I am saying that there is an education going on so that, and Canadians in particular, and I can say this having lived in many countries, Canadians are better at this than most. I know, but we really are hard on ourselves as Canadians, and we should be, but we are better at recognizing we have done mistakes and rectifying than most countries. And I can feel good about that.
That's good.
I can feel good that there is definitely, I am so encouraged. Like, in comparison to the schooling my daughter got in the Netherlands, which was further white supremacist schooling. I could go on that for days. In comparison to the schooling she's getting in New Brunswick, where she's learning to appreciate diversity and all of these things, I feel so much more optimism for Canada just because of what she's learning in school.
That's really good to hear.
That is encouraging. Oh my goodness. And again, she's only 10, so hopefully they could take this curriculum all the way to grade 12 and beyond. I mean, the generation coming up will be just incredibly educated and hopefully change their view on Indigenous people. So Michelle, thank you. Thank you so much for these deep insights into so much more we have to learn about not only Indigenous culture, but the women within the culture. I certainly don't claim to be an expert too, and whatever information I can get and whoever I can listen to, I welcome it with open arms. So I know we're getting close to the time, but Kelly, we are gonna pivot over to you now. You mentioned something about the South Korean women that I knew nothing of. And I'd like you to tell us more about that. Enlighten us, please. I really need to know about these principles. And I think you mentioned 4. So why these 4 principles? How did they come about?
According to the women in South Korea, it came about because the culture in South Korea was hopelessly misogynistic, and there were a lot of women who were killing themselves rather than live this misogynistic life. And that I think kind of like shook. I know similar things happen in Bangladesh and India and all that because I have friends there as well. Women are killing themselves rather than living in misogyny all over the world. But yes, it was downright misogynistic and hopelessly patriarchal. And it's kind of an interesting South Korea, why it's happening there now. It still has this very patriarchal culture where women specifically are supposed, they have the two income households that most developed nations need for living is still necessary for an economic thriving. However, women are still supposed to look after 100% of the house and 100% of the childcare and 100% of the family responsibilities. And so it's the women who aren't killing themselves and who are participating in this lifestyle are running themselves in and like dying very early. And so this is just what I see as a natural response to women saying, I refuse to be crushed by this system. I refuse. And interestingly, and on the other side of it, if anyone on this radio show has ever heard of Project 2025, the Republican blueprint that they have actually installed most of in the United States right now, they have actually have a response to the 4B movement that they're afraid is growing in the States. And they have planned to put signal people in camps to marry them up. And I'm not making this up. You can totally look it up. So this is the reality. This is what we see. This is the patriarchy responding to women saying, I'm not doing the patriarchy anymore. And the reality also is of the patriarchy is if women stopped propping it up, it would fall in a week. So I see these women as inspirations. I see them as refusing to participate in their own dehumanization. And as a woman who has been in a heterosexual relationship with a man for 17 years, so sure, he's a feminist, but I've had to teach him so much. I understand. I understand, even in our feminist relationship that we're trying so hard for, I still work more. I still do more emotional labor. I still do all of these things, and I'm a strong, rabid, white feminist in Canada. So if it's this hard for me and I still don't have a relationship of equality, what's it like for people who do not have the freedom of speech, education, and cultural, at least perceived freedom to be who and what they want to be?
Thank you. Thank you, Kelly. Sophia, any questions for Kelly over here? I know she's all fired up. Take it away.
Oh my, Kelly, I think we've spoken about this, but I do relate to your activist parts, having had some of those experiences that have shaped me as a student activist. And if I recall correctly, I think 2018 was the year that I finished, and I think that was the last year international student fees didn't go up. And the next year, I think it went up by 110%. So yeah, so I recall many protests that I've taken part in against those fee hikes, and yeah, so much more work which has been done even around gender equality and rape culture, and just so many great things that I think the student movement has really taught me and given me so much experience with. I just wanted to say, not really much of a question, and just to Sarojini's point as well, I this was the first time I heard about the South Korean 4B movement as well, and it makes total sense to me. So I can see how that's why and how that's happening. Like you said, like there's so much that happens in India as well, with honor killing, with killing girls, and even before they're born. I'm not sure people know, but in India you can actually find out the gender of your kid, because they literally will kill them before they're born if they're a girl. And it's unfortunate because in more rural areas, it still does happen. Like there's people still prefer boys, and still, if a girl is born, think they have like the worst luck and a burden that they have to deal with for their entire lives. But I just wanted to say, Kelly, I think when you were speaking, it was just so emotional for me, and it just brought up so much, just from everything as women that we have been through, and everything that you shared has just been so inspiring, and I've learned so much from it, and I think there's so much more I want to learn from you, and hopefully we can chat after. But I just wanted to thank you for bringing your experience and your perspective and sharing that with us today. It was very very helpful and informative and eye-opening for me. Thank you.
Sophia, I think we're cut from the same cloth. Psychology activists. What are you going to do? There's a quote I've been searching for. I finally found it. It's a succinct thing to explain the whole 4B movement. If the world born from my body oppresses me, I'll not let that world exist.
Cool.
And that is the most powerful statement and so let us just unpack for what you just said. Why are so I was about to scream when you said boys are more wanted. Why?
I wish I knew the answer. I wish I knew. Well, I don't get it.
I ultimately do know why. It's the patriarchy, and it's honestly men's inferiority complex. Psychologist Horney talked about it wasn't penis envy, it's womb envy. And she specifically talked about how men also invent wards so they can be touch death the way that women do in childbirth. So there's a whole lot of explanation of patriarchy. But the reality is women provide life, nurturing, relationships, so many things for our current survival in this world. Yeah. And I honestly think the patriarchy is underserving men as well and making them not be full human beings. And that's what the patriarchy has. I would not be a man. As crappy as it is to be a woman sometimes, I would not trade it in a million years. And so we need this giant shift in understanding to go back to, honestly, the way we used to think before the Abrahamic religions came in. And that was the matriarchal living. That's the way, if we lived in our current dog-eat-dog individualist society right now, our species would not have survived this long. We need much more connection. It's not competition, it's collaboration. It's not domination, it's partnership. And so this is the mindset we need to go to. And honestly, in my life, I work with men, I work with women. It is women who embody the partnership, the pro-social, the evolutionary kinds of theories and perspectives we need to actually move ourselves forward so that we can have a climate and a crisis and economy that's recognizable to us, for our children. So I want to argue, and so I do my own revolutionary things. For example, at Christmas time, we do not celebrate the birth of a boy. In my house, we celebrate the birth of my girl. We celebrate the birth of girls. We celebrate Mary. In Christmas in my house, we're celebrating the birth givers. We're celebrating the life givers. We're not celebrating a boy. Oh my God, another boy was born. Right? Okay. No, he's not a life giver, right? So there are ways to change things for your own self. And then you can have the audacity of me to go and talk on a podcast and plant all these seeds to everybody. And that's how we expand our minds. That's how we grow. And that's how we make it so that the world is a little bit more livable for more people.
Thank you. Thank you, Kelly. Wow. Michelle.
All right. I do have a question for Kelly. So Kelly, when you were speaking, I could really relate to what you had said about the same universal themes and issues for women across all ages, economics, professional situations, personal situations. And I could really identify that because it's something that I see and I've lived and I've experienced. And you're right, those, women that were incarcerated, so many of the same issues as mothers, that are in the child welfare system, they're the, executives I've worked with, my friends, colleagues, the indigenous women, except what I see is that obviously for women, of color and indigenous women and women who have higher levels of poverty, more obstacles. It's like more, right? You can just see everybody lined up and, there's more obstacles, but the issues are similar. So I agree. And I agree. But what I'm curious about is that when you do bring some of these women together, or you're working with women and, I'm kind of curious about your company and what you do. Like, what are some of the strategies that you use, that work, with all those women as you work through some of those universal themes?
Well, honestly, a lot of those places I go into, the women have not had an honest conversation with themselves, and they have lied to themselves to be able to stay in those jobs. So I have to go in with kid gloves, and I have to go in with not my gender studies knowledge words. Sometimes I have to go in, I don't dare say the word sexism, because I learned that that causes resistance and that causes defensiveness. And so instead we talk about your own experiences. And I have seen very high power women go from, at the beginning of my workshop, of actually, I've never dealt with any, I've been very lucky. I've been very lucky. I haven't experienced it, but to the end, I'm hearing horrific stories from them. So a lot of it is allowing space. Like, so sometimes I just feel like I look like a genius just because I brought women together and asked them questions. And the magic that just happens, because just like you heard stuff in my story and I heard just stuff in your story, it's all group therapy. We're all seeing each other in each other. And then instantly the silos of separation that the patriarchy has put us in is gone.
Yeah.
And we're like, oh, wow. Oh, actually, I dealt with that. And then, so what I love to do is, so I have a structure, but I'm pretty flexible and adaptable depending on where the vibe is of the group and where, how far they want to go. So I'll start off with like strengths. And then what's really good is sometimes I'll ask them for 7 strengths. And it could be easy to come up with 3, but I ask for 7 because by the time you get to like 5, it's hard. And it's really great if it's a group of women who know each other, because then they're stuck and then they help each other. It's like, no, you're really good at that. And then, so they'll get their 7 strengths or pretty close to it. And then we go on to, okay, give me 5 weaknesses. And women are really good at giving their weaknesses. And then we'll share each other's, the weaknesses you have. And then there's women in the thing is like, that's not a weakness. No, you were standing up for yourself. And then again, there's this hive mind, this group think that I don't even have to say anything. I'll just guide just the littlest bit. And you see the women where they can see the misogyny that each other is going through better than they can see their own misogyny. And then depending on where we're going, if it was a group that was particularly interested in dealing with problematic or bad behaviors, I have a full hour on just, when he says this, you do this. So it's worksheet. I'm really good at comebacks. Not everybody is. So I put comebacks on a sheet, and you get to go away with that. We do practice. We do a practice run of, okay, what's a misogynistic thing that you've heard said? Again, not using the word misogynistic. What's a bad behavior you've had to deal with? And then we act it out, and then we group think, and then they get to use it. And so it's not such a foreign thing, because when the bad behavior comes up, and like what, for example, one of the examples I go is the menstruator, and he's a man who says, "What are you, on your period?" And so every woman everywhere has experienced this, but it's such a shock. You're so decentered when it happens. So let's think about this beforehand. Let's deal with this beforehand. So it might take you 5 seconds, maybe 3, but you'll have that little comeback. And honestly, I got this from how I do mega projects, and we reverse engineer everything. So when shit costs, cursing, when craft costs lots of money and decision making, you problematize before you were faced with that position. You problematize because you know you're going to be emotional in that time, and you want people to have already signed off on it. So we figure out what could happen. We deal with it when our bodies are calm and we're feeling supported, so that when we go out into the world and deal with it, we feel like we have a better foundation to react or to respond.
Yeah, I like that. It's great.
Thank you. Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Michelle.
I do have a question for Kelly, actually.
Sophia, did you have a question, my love?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. Go ahead.
Kelly, I want to know about your program. Who can participate in it? How does one sign up? Is it open to all women or certain women in certain professions? Because I would like to sign up, please. So please let me know.
God, I love you. Well, first of all, I'm on Facebook. I have 50,000 organic followers. And I haven't put out a program in a while because I've been dealing with crazy things with mega projects. But I will show you it's like an Artemis. Oh no, not working. Strong Women Co. Just look me up on Facebook. I'd release things, but Sophia, next time I'll put a program out. I'll absolutely invite you to it. It's time. I think it's time for me to put another one together out now. To tell you the truth, I was doing a lot of it in Europe because there's just so many more people. And then we moved here to put mega projects of wind farms off the coast of the US. And that has kind of kept me occupied. And it wasn't until Trump 2.0 started that I kind of switched because my other side of me is I'm a huge environmentalist. And I fundamentally believe we need to get off fossil fuels. So I live my values in that way. And so I'm now in a shift of being like, okay, women need my attention right now, in particular. Yeah.
And you have her contact, her email through the threads. So certainly reach out. And Michelle too, if anybody wants to reach out to Michelle as well for her programs, you guys have the contact information.
Michelle, I was just thinking about how great it might be for that kind of reverse thinking for Indigenous people and how to deal with racism. Like, like just that literally.
Yeah, I like it.
Just the beginning of a conversation of like, why don't we just deal with some things, some crappy things we've heard? All right. How did you deal with that? Oh, did you feel good about that or not? Like it's just, again, kind of building on that support because we accept that this is our reality, but I also believe we can change it if we actually have that honest lens and then problematize it together, right? Like that's the thing is when we get all of our minds together on it, we will find a solution.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, no, I like that. And I think that's, really good advice. It's a good strategy.
Just feels so satisfying.
Oh, sorry, go on.
Oh, no. Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, you and Michelle can collaborate when you make another trip to Newfoundland, my dear.
Yes, that'd be great, Kelly.
You said you were planning to come back, still up in the air, but when you do visit, well, you bet you I'll be planning a luncheon for all of us, including Dolores, because
love that.
Yes, you. Please. Okay, she's so sorry she couldn't fit in on the recording today, but I'll be catching her tomorrow. But sisters, Kelly, Sophia, Michelle, from the bottom of my heart, thank you, thank you, thank you. This has been so invigorating, so inspirational. Thanks to all of you, and I know Dolores will hear this too. Thank you for accepting my invitation, and this is something yearly we do in collaboration with CHMR. I don't think there's any other program there that actually has been so consistent. So our program director really looks forward to it, and she promotes it and make sure everybody can hear it. So I do want to thank you, all of you. You've been fantastic. We all learned so much today, I must say, and I'm really even looking forward to next year already. So don't be surprised if you hear from me, all right? So thank you very much, everybody.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, Sarojini.
Michelle, please reach out to me if you have any questions or you want to just connect or just compare notes or anything at all, lady. I think we are bottom up systemic thinkers in a similar way, I think.
Yes, I'd love to do that. I've already reached out to you there on Facebook. So.
Okay. Oh, yay. Okay.
Awesome. Well, we will put it up on YouTube as well. So if anybody, like the posters are ready.
Thank you, Michelle.
Nice to see you again.
Nice to meet you, Michelle and Kelly.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you. Thank you so much for listening to this special broadcast of International Women's Day 2026 in collaboration with CHMR. all of us here at Caribbean Connections would like to say a very special thank you to all of our panelists who have so willingly dedicated their time and commitment to ensure that this project comes to fruition. Sophia Solomon, Michelle Hawco, Kelly Hickey, and Dr. Dolores Mullings. Mad mega love and gratitude to you beautiful and inspiring change makers. And of course to our program director and station manager Rhea Rollman, who gave us some extra airtime for this special broadcast. Thank you so much, Rhea. And to Colleen Power, our news director, for her continued support, guidance, and encouragement always. We hope that you've enjoyed today's broadcast for International Women's Day 2026. Wherever you're listening from, thank you. Please join us again every Thursday, 1 p.m. Newfoundland Standard Time and 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time. We have some awesome programs lined up for you for the rest of March and into April and May. However, in the meantime, please take good care of yourselves and of each other. Be kind and stay well and healthy. Have an incredible weekend. Once again, happy Women's History Month and happy International Women's Day 2026. I would like to share with you two quotations that really struck me. The first one is by Mother Teresa. I alone cannot change the world, but I can cast a stone across the waters to create many ripples. The other one is by Eleanor Roosevelt, former First Lady of the United States. Well-behaved women rarely make history. Let's give it up for Anissa and the Supertones to take us out today. This is Warrior.